There is a signature to strip Jon Jones a
I saw
petition.
that. Did you sign it?
That's
You
over
signed it, didn't you?
70,000.
You signed it, didn't you?
I did.
I'm gonna search the database.
I didn't search it.
I'm gonna find your email on there.
Dude, that's 70,000 signatures.
The UFC heavyweight division is teetering on the edge of a seismic shakeup as mounting frustration over Jon Jones' absence has.
Great, get up.
Sorry, it's a Jones thing, Tom.
Triggered a tidal wave of fan unrest. With over 158,000 fans signing a petition demanding that the UFC strip Jones of his heavyweight title, the call for change is growing louder by the day, and interim champion Tom Aspinall is fanning the flames. Aspinall, who has held the interim title for an astonishing 18 months, shared the viral petition on his Instagram story, signaling his support for those demanding action. Many believe that Jones's inactivity and refusal to engage in a title unification.
What about this? There are people who have started a petition to strip Jon Jones. We're now at 115,135 as of maybe an hour or two ago when we took this screen grab. Jon does also bring up a good point. If Jon told the UFC like 2 months ago, hey, I'm not interested, it's no longer on him.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? So, like, you remember one time I sat here and I said the UFC is not to blame? And I said that because they met the number. But now if he tells them, hey, I'm not interested, all right, you could say, well, you're to blame because maybe you told them, hey, if you meet this number, I'm fighting. And then you could say, all right, UFC is now back to blame because he told them 2 months ago, you know, I'm out. Why didn't you give Tom Aspinall a fight? There's this whole thing. Now, I heard Dana White say recently, like, look, we got to give these guys 3 fights a year. Remember we talked about this yesterday to a degree? Yeah. And it's like, all right, I guess they can come out and say, look, we could have given Tom an interim fight, but he told us he didn't want that. So that's considered turning it down. The whole thing is messy. There is no black and white sort of breakdown of it all. But the point is, I think the world has spoken. Look at that.
Bout has stalled the division, leaving Aspinall and the sport stuck in limbo. The controversy stems from Jones's decision to face Stipe Miocic upon returning from injury in late 2024, rather than unify the title against Aspinall. Since then, there's been no official date, no commitment, and no clarity from the UFC or from Jones. Fans and fighters alike are growing increasingly impatient as the heavyweight picture remains frozen. Jones recently made an appearance on a podcast from Thailand, where he delivered a vague and unsettling update on his future. While he didn't rule out a return, he hinted that competition may no longer be his focus. For a fighter once obsessed with victory and revered for his dominance, the shift...
Tom Aspinall said that he's getting frustrated waiting. He said it's very difficult mentally on him, but he said that this right here, this waiting, is the fight for him. On Jon Jones to set the date, stay motivated. It's a tricky bit for him to stay motivated, and he's trying his best, but at times it gets very difficult knowing that he wants to fight, but he's not getting the fight right now, especially.
In tone was jarring. He floated the idea of exhibition fights, or stepping back entirely, further clouding the future of the heavyweight title. This lack of urgency from Jones has only fueled speculation that he may be preparing to walk away without ever facing Aspinall. Meanwhile, Aspinall has done everything the UFC has asked of him.
In my opinion, if you look at his body of work over the last 15 years, he's like as close as you can get to perfection as possible. He's like 37, 38 years old, but not only that, he's got 1 million miles on the clock. So he's got a lot of damage on the body. He's took a lot of shots to the head. And that's not me saying anything negative about it. That's the reality of it. And I'm sure Jon Jones is aware of that. And he's fighting one of the most concussive punchers in UFC history. And I just think I can exploit it. Like, I think to get out the way of me for 25 minutes at this point in his career without getting hit once, and that's all I need is just one, I think that's going to be very difficult for anybody.
The Manchester-born standout has defeated every top 5 contender except for Cyril Gane, who currently sits at number 2 in the rankings. His performances have been dominant, and his willingness to face any opponent stands in stark contrast to the current champion's ambiguity. The situation has drawn strong opinions from across the MMA world, including from Daniel Cormier, former two-division champion and longtime Jones rival. Cormier offered a nuanced take on the unfolding.
He's looking down at a young man, and it's like, he's not scared. Make no mistake about it. But I think it's enough to like question it. And you know what I think a big worry might be for him? Because with Aspinall, he could potentially get knocked out. Like legitimately knocked out and put on his back and out cold. And I just don't know that he wants to have that visual of him in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that's probably, you probably nailed it right on the head right there.
Saga. On one hand, Cormier expressed doubt that Jones would walk away without facing Aspinall. His ego won't allow that, he argued, adding that Jones is too aware of public perception to let people believe he dodged the biggest threat of his career. According to Cormier, Jones would ultimately feel compelled to silence the critics. But on the other hand, Cormier acknowledged what many are beginning to believe, that Aspinall might be the most dangerous challenge Jon Jones has ever faced. Now he's looking down at a young man, and it's like, he's not scared.
He's ducking, Tom?
No.
You think that fight happens?
100%. And it will happen this year. I believe I could go a little further and tell you this.
I think I could as well.
New York.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Well, we went there.
Yeah.
So going from Craig and Tom to my third favorite athlete to bring up to you, Dan.
Could we stay on that for just a second?
Please.
I never miss an opportunity to be my usual dick of a self towards Jon.
That's what I was aiming for, really.
Yeah, I just don't feel that's happening here. I don't believe. Let me just give you a timeline. Jon beats Stipe, Aspinall's in the ring. The only thing we know about interim champion, because I mean, we will change the rules as we go in this sport, we're well aware, but one thing that we know about interim champion is the interim champion is the #1 contender. The interim champion will compete with the undisputed champion. If for some reason that doesn't happen, they switch chairs. You are now the undisputed champion. I mean, that is why this works. That's why there's no conversation.
But it's enough to make him think twice, Cormier said. With Aspinall, he could legitimately get knocked out. And I don't think he wants that image of himself, out cold in front of the world. Cormier's comments struck a chord. Jones has built one of the most untouchable resumes in MMA history. The youngest UFC champion ever at 23, undefeated in his last 20 fights, and widely considered the greatest to ever step in the cage. He's never been finished or knocked out. That image.
Expect one more rodeo?
I don't know what life holds as far as fighting, competing. I do feel like I'll be a lifelong martial artist, whether I'm coaching others or taking exhibition matches or things like that. There's a lot of great competition still in the UFC. I do view myself as more than a fighter. And being in my position, I feel like I have a lot more options than a lot of the other fighters as far as the ability to leave and return and things like that. And so right now, I'm just focusing on love, happiness, kindness.
His body, limp on the canvas, is something he's avoided for nearly 2 decades. And that's exactly what makes Aspinall such a threat. As the UFC stalls, the voices calling for movement grow louder. Whether it's a fight or a title strip, fans want clarity. Aspinall wants a path forward. And if Jones won't provide one soon, the weight of his own silence may become too much for the UFC to ignore. Jon Jones's continued silence surrounding a potential title unification bout with Tom Aspinall has raised fresh speculation, not just about logistics, but about legacy. During a recent podcast, Jones admitted that his connection to winning is so...
The biggest debate and the most controversial thing in the UFC right now, should Jon Jones be stripped of his heavyweight belt? Do you feel that this whole thing is just a ploy and they're actually negotiating behind the scenes?
I think so.
You do think so? Because I do too, but like, it's gotten so crazy that now you start to have some doubts. Like, is he kind of just throwing this and taunting the fans and UFC, or is this just a negotiation tactic and they're actually having serious conversations behind the scenes?
I agree. I do believe it's negotiations going on. They get that food, that food is boiling. People, and eventually Jon Jones, yes, I'm fighting, and then people, everybody's going to turn in.
Bro, if that happens, it's going to be. I think it's got to be December. You got to end the year with this fight.
I think it's November. I think it's New York.
Either way,
I think it's New York. I just think.
I mean, it's getting.
Jon Jones has a lot to lose, right? But let's just think, Jon Jones lost. Let's just think that fight happened. Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall wins, and it's a close fight, and people think too. I don't think it's that easy.
Right.
But let's presume that Tom Aspinall wins.
Deeply personal that the thought of losing could leave him devastated and depressed. He confessed he couldn't see himself enjoying fighting if he wasn't champion. For many, that emotional admission confirmed what fans have long suspected. Jones isn't avoiding the fight because of scheduling. He's protecting his legacy. Tom Aspinall, young, powerful, and in his prime, represents a legitimate threat to the undefeated.
Talk about some storylines that are going on right now. We're about to enter the big summer month of June, International Fight Week, 2 pay-per-views for the UFC, but all anyone can seemingly talk about is the heavyweight division and the absolute mess that's going on. I'm almost tired of it. There's not much more that needs to be said. There's a petition out there with 75,000 plus people asking for Jon Jones to be stripped. Tom Aspinall's teasing some sort of announcement for Wednesday, but says it's not going to be a fight, and then made a joke that they're giving him an interim BMF title fight in the heavyweight division. Like, he's clearly just joking around, but I don't know. This is exhausting. Are you tired of this? Are you exhausted of this as well?
I am not. We saw Jon Jones sit on his ass for 3 years where he could have come out and fought. And there were 3 years when, he's taking creatine and doing pull-ups and trying to gain some weight. But the rest of us that had fought him and even observed, he said, hey, Jon, you don't need to gain weight. You can go right now. I think he weighed like 228 when this experiment started. He got all the way to 236, but he burned 3 years. 3 years at 3 fights a year, which is the average. I mean, we got robbed of 9 or 10 Jon Jones fights, which even if realistically was 5 or 6, 5 or 6 more experiences with the greatest mixed martial artists ever do. Like, we're going to really want that someday. We're going to want those tapes.
Run Jones has preserved for nearly 2 decades. A loss wouldn't just hurt his record, it could shatter the image he's spent his entire career building. Despite the uncertainty, Dana White remains publicly hopeful, insisting the UFC still plans to book Jones versus Aspinall in 2025, but the longer the delay drags on, the less confidence fans and fighters seem to have that it'll ever happen. Veteran UFC contender Gilbert Burns believes the fight will eventually take place. He argues that even if Jones loses, his legacy would remain intact. With everything Jones has already accomplished, a loss at this point, especially to a rising star like Aspinall, could be softened by narrative. Jones could cite age, ring rust, or simply being past his prime. According to Burns, fans would still remember the dominant champion, not the older version who lost late in his career. But Chael Sonnen doesn't share that optimism. The outspoken analyst believes the moment has passed. Once hyped as the biggest heavyweight title fight in UFC history, Jones versus Aspinall is rapidly losing its luster. Sonnen says that even mentioning the fight on his YouTube channel draws little interest, a sharp contrast to typical super fights, where anticipation grows with delay. In this case, he argues, Jones's silence has become a form of anti-promotion. With no meaningful engagement from the champion, Sonnen fears that, unless something dramatic changes soon, the once massive bout may fade into irrelevance, a missed opportunity in UFC history.